Do you know who attachment Adam is?
I don't think so. No.
So he's a psychologist, and all of his body of work is around relationships and attachment styles. And we've actually done a couple shows together. I think it was him that was saying it's something like 30% of people are secure. That's it. And you're like, well, no wonder all these relationships are failing and people are deciding to be single, and divorce rates are in like the high 30s, 40%. So if like only 30% of adults are secure, I'm assuming that 30% has all coupled up. So that leaves everyone who's insecure to try to pair up and figure out how to make it work, or I guess not work.
And it's so true. So originally the research was like 50%, but it's showing it's on the decline somewhere around closer to 30%. There aren't like super in-depth studies. They're more like Gallup polls or things like that. We also have an attachment quiz that we have, and we've had a lot of people take that quiz, well over 1 million people. And we're looking at the skew being like much less than, and that's a good sample size of people, much less than 50%, sort of sitting around 35%. So yes. And you're also right that what ends up happening is securely attached people are actually more drawn to other securely attached people, because we tend to want to invest in people who remind us of the subconscious comfort zone in the relationship we have to ourselves. So if somebody, it's really interesting if you see somebody really anxiously attached because they people please so much and they're so externally focused, they're often dismissing and avoiding their own feelings, needs, and boundaries because they're people pleasing everyone else. So their subconscious comfort zone in the way they treat themselves is they dismiss themselves all the time. So they're particularly drawn to people who will also dismiss them. And so you'll actually see that like all the insecure attachment styles do very much end up pairing up together in various forms. And a lot of secure people, because they're very secure in relationship to self, they're drawn to other secure individuals. So they do tend to couple up, and then there tends to be insecurely attached individuals that are sort of in the rest of that space. Now, what you're looking for if somebody's not sure about what attachment style they are, we've developed a framework called integrated attachment theory. And we've published this body of work, and it's all about basically how to identify your attachment style by your core wounds, your needs, and your behaviors in relationships. And so anxious attachment styles, you'll see like their big core wounds. They fear abandonment, being alone, unloved, disliked, rejected, excluded, emotionally unsafe if somebody pulls away. Like those are their big wounds, and they really need a lot more like validation in relationships and acknowledgement and reassurance and certainty, and they want to feel important and prioritized. And usually people can start to really hear themselves in this, and they'll cling almost exclusively when they feel somebody pulling away. Dismissive avoidance, their big core wounds are I'll be unsafe if I'm in a conflict, I'm defective. They're very stoic, so you won't see it, but they really feel ashamed around criticism or negative feedback. I don't belong. I'll be trapped, helpless, or powerless in the wrong relationship. I'm weak if I'm vulnerable, or even stupid if I'm vulnerable. And so those are their wounds, and their big needs in relationships are like freedom, independence, autonomy. They also tend to need appreciation and acknowledgement for things. And they actually do really well with people who provide understanding and acceptance and support to them, as well as empathy. Then our fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance almost exclusively deactivate. So if they're triggered, even if they're feeling like anxious, because dismissive avoidance can still feel like, oh, I asked this person out and I like her and I sent her a text and I'm waiting to hear back, and they'll feel a little bit of anxiety, but how they will cope with their own anxiety is to continuously try to diminish their attachment needs. So they'll go, I feel anxious. Well, it might not work out anyways. I probably don't really need this person. So they'll do the opposite in their mind of the anxious attachment style, who will keep trying to get closer. Even if they feel vulnerable, they'll try to push away further, dismissive avoidance. And lastly, fearful avoidance. And this is where you can really start to see some of the differences. Fearful avoidance, big wounds, because they share in both sides. They fear being abandoned. They fear being betrayed. They tend to really struggle to trust. It's a huge foundational part of their personality. They fear being unloved, but they also fear very much being trapped or helpless or powerless. And so they will have these wounds that flip-flop them back and forth. And they actually, in relationships, they need a lot of depth. They need a lot of growth. They need a lot of novelty and discovery. They need freedom and independence, but they also want to feel like they're a priority to their partners. So they kind of share in both sides there. And what you'll see is that fearful avoidance, if you're not sure listening, if you're a fearful avoidant, they pretty equally activate and deactivate. So they will have times where they feel vulnerable and that will cause them to cling, but they'll also have times where they feel vulnerable and that will cause them to push away. They're just like the dismissive. They're like, wait, I don't want to feel this vulnerable. I don't know if this is the right thing. So in those three buckets, you'll start to really see what your attachment style is and how it takes shape.
It is so fascinating. I wish this should be a course. Like everyone should have to take this in high school or middle school and just like work on personal development, because like going out into the world, it just has given me such a useful framework, and it explains so much of my life up until very, very, very recently. And the work that I've done to like try to navigate this. And it's so funny because I would say even like 2 years ago, I would kind of dismiss some of this and be like, no, all of these choices were very conscious on my part. Like I wanted a relationship like this. I wanted to be this independent, and I'm not scared of intimacy or vulnerability or like all of these things. I'm like, holy cow, I've been lying to myself for so long. And a lot of these go back to childhood traumas and core wounds. And I recently did, integrated psychedelic therapy to work on some of this, and it just like shattered my belief systems in such a profound way. I was like, holy cow, I have made it so hard for people to love me. Like I've gotten in my own way, and I didn't have that clarity until that experience. And it was truly like a reality shift for me. And obviously there's like probably a million different ways to get to a secure attachment. But with this information, it gives you so much power, because you're like, okay, well, if this is a program and this program is creating these behaviors and these thought patterns, then I should be able to reinstall a different program, like kind of like factory reset, and do the one that is going to be more beneficial to like my mental health and like my longevity of relationships and the quality of those relationships.